Back in 2009, Kevin Rudd, who was the Australian Prime Minister at the time, stirred up quite a debate by supporting the idea of a big Australia. This was in response to a government report that predicted the country's population would grow quickly from 22 million in 2010 to 35 million by 2050, mostly because of high immigration. Rudd even appointed a Minister for Population to start planning for this big growth. But as time went on and Rudd was pushed out of office, the whole idea started facing major resistance. What was once seen as a way to boost the economy and create prosperity became a controversial topic, with many Australians worried about what it would mean for jobs, housing, and the Aussie way of life. So, why has Big Australia become such a big issue? And what does it mean for the future of the country? Today, we're diving deep into this debate to figure out why so many people are against the idea and what the future holds for Australia. To understand the current debate, we must look at the history of immigration in Australia. Australia's immigration policies have changed a lot over the years. The White Australia policy, officially known as the Immigration Restriction Act of 1901, was a set of historical rules created by the Australian government to limit non-European immigration. The policy was meant to keep Australia mostly white and to protect its British cultural heritage. It included measures like a test where immigrants had to write in a European language, which effectively excluded many non-European applicants. The policy showed the widespread racial prejudices of the time and was influenced by fears of job competition and the desire to protect wages and living standards for white Australians. It especially targeted Asian, Pacific Islander, and other non-European immigrants. After the trauma of WF2, Australia's vulnerability during the Pacific War, as well as its small population compared to other nations, led to policies summed up by the phrase "populate or perish." This was a discriminatory phrase that essentially meant populating Australia with Europeans or risk being overrun by Asians. In 1947, Immigration Minister Arthur Colwell told critics of the government's mass immigration policy, "We have 25 years at most to populate this country before the yellow races are down on us." Many non-white immigrants landed in Australia during the war, mostly Chinese, but also Malays, Indonesians, and Filipinos. Still, Colwell controversially tried to have them all sent back. An Australian brigade was part of the British Commonwealth Occupation Force that occupied Japan from 1945 to 1952. Over time, the policy faced more and more criticism, both at home and abroad, for being discriminatory. After World War II, changes started happening because there was a need for more people and skilled workers, leading to a gradual relaxation of the policy. The policy was officially ended in the 1960s and 1970s, leading up to the Racial Discrimination Act of 1975, which made it illegal to discriminate based on race. The end of the White Australia policy marked a big shift towards a more multicultural and inclusive Australian society. After the High Court decision, O'Keefe versus Colwell highlighted the flaws in the Chifley government's Aliens Deportation Act 1948. The Wartime Refugees Removal Act 1949 was passed, giving the immigration minister broad authority to deport people. To help immigrants from continental Europe fit into Australian society and become part of the mainstream, the Australian government encouraged their assimilation. Australian immigration laws were changed in 1947 to allow for more immigrants from Europe, even though it had previously focused on promoting immigration from Britain. Australia's large-scale immigration of Europeans from previously unwanted nations weakened Australia's claim to be a mostly British nation and led to calls for the repeal of the White Australia policy. In an odd turn of events, liberal British professors working at Australian universities were among the loudest opponents of the White Australia policy in the 1950s, given that the policy's goal was to keep Australia a British colony. The Melbourne University Immigration Reform Group was established in 1959 to push for the policy's repeal. Since then, Australia has welcomed millions of immigrants from around the world. The country's demographics have changed dramatically, making it one of the most multicultural nations on Earth. But this change hasn't been without controversy. Academics argue that a larger population is essential for economic growth. They claim it will help fill skill shortages, support the housing market, and drive innovation. The government's policies have focused on skilled migration, aiming to attract talented individuals who can contribute to the economy. However, there's a growing concern about the strain on infrastructure, housing, and services. Critics argue that Australia's cities are already bursting at the seams, with traffic congestion, housing affordability issues, and pressures on public services. This all boils down to a main argument: economic concerns. Many Australians feel that an influx of immigrants creates competition for jobs, pushing down wages and working conditions. They argue that while immigration might boost certain sectors, it also makes inequality and job insecurity worse for local workers. Critics worry that increased immigration leads to an oversupply of labour, which can put downward pressure on wages. They say that employers might prefer hiring immigrants willing to work for lower pay, which could weaken the bargaining power of Australian-born workers. This scenario is especially concerning in industries with lower wages and less job security, where competition for jobs is already fierce. Additionally, there's a belief that an influx of immigrants strains public services and infrastructure. Schools, hospitals, and public transport systems might become overwhelmed, leading to longer wait times and lower quality of service for everyone. The concern extends to job security as well. Critics suggest that a higher migrant population might lead to a more unstable job market, where temporary or contract positions become more common and long-term, stable employment opportunities shrink. This can create a sense of insecurity among local workers who fear that they might be easily replaced. While the Australian Centre for Population shows data supporting the positive impacts of migration on productivity, employment, and innovation, these concerns reflect the complexities and challenges of managing immigration policy. Balancing the economic benefits of a diverse and skilled workforce with the need to protect and support the local labour market remains a controversial issue in the debate over Big Australia. Moreover, the housing market has been a hot topic in the debate over a Big Australia. As more people move to cities, housing prices have skyrocketed, making it increasingly difficult for first-time buyers to enter the market. This issue has fueled a sense of frustration and dissatisfaction with the idea of a larger population. The high cost of housing is not just a financial burden, it also affects people's quality of life. Many are forced to live farther from their workplaces to find affordable housing, resulting in longer commutes and less time for family and leisure activities. This can lead to increased stress and a lower overall standard of living. Urban areas, especially in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, have seen a surge in demand for housing due to population growth driven by immigration. This influx has put significant pressure on the housing market, leading to a rapid increase in property prices and rental costs. For many Australians, especially young people and first-time buyers, the dream of home ownership is becoming increasingly out of reach. The frustration is further compounded by the belief that the government is not doing enough to address the housing crisis. Critics argue that current policies favour investors and developers over first-time buyers and renters. They call for measures such as increased investment in affordable housing, stricter regulations on foreign investment in real estate, and policies to encourage more balanced population growth across regions. This sense of disappointment with the idea of a larger population reflects broader concerns about the sustainability of rapid growth. While immigration can bring economic benefits, it also poses significant challenges that need to be carefully managed to ensure that all Australians can enjoy a good quality of life. Addressing the housing crisis is a crucial part of this equation, requiring a balanced and thoughtful approach to population policy and urban planning. Beyond economic issues, there are deep-seated cultural and social factors at play. Some Australians are concerned about the impact of immigration on national identity. They fear that a rapidly changing population could dilute traditional values and cultural norms. This sentiment is often amplified by media portrayals of immigration, which can sometimes highlight conflict and tension. National identity is a deeply personal and emotional issue for many people. In Australia, which prides itself on its unique blend of cultures and laid-back lifestyle, There is a concern that increased immigration might lead to the erosion of these defining characteristics. Some Australians worry that the rapid influx of people from diverse backgrounds could overwhelm the social fabric, leading to a loss of shared values and a sense of community. These fears are often stoked by media representations that focus on negative aspects of immigration, such as stories about cultural clashes, crime, or economic strain. Such portrayals can create a perception that immigrants are not integrating or contributing positively to society, even though evidence often suggests otherwise. This media narrative can amplify anxieties and fuel opposition to immigration policies. The concern over national identity is not just about culture. It also includes language, traditions, and social norms. Australians who feel a strong connection to their heritage may perceive immigration as a threat to the preservation of their way of life. They might fear that traditional Australian values, such as mateship, a fair go, and a relaxed attitude, could be undermined by the presence of different cultural practices and beliefs. These fears of cultural dilution and changing societal norms are reflected in the rise of online platforms like Auspill, which have gained traction among Australians who feel that their identity and values are under threat. Auspill, a controversial and influential platform, has become a significant voice in the so-called manosphere, particularly resonating with young men. It blends self-improvement advice, dating tips, and cultural commentary, often critiquing modern societal norms and gender dynamics. Central to Auspill's message is the idea that traditional masculinity is being eroded by a combination of societal changes, feminism, and immigration. In its darker corners, Auspill's community has also been associated with more extreme views, including nationalism and anti-immigration sentiment. Critics argue that the platform can sometimes serve as an echo chamber, amplifying fears and frustrations about immigration and its impact on Australian society. These concerns have contributed to the broader debate over Australia's future, including the controversy surrounding Big Australia. The rise of platforms like Auspill highlights the role that social media and online communities play in shaping public opinion on immigration. These platforms can both reflect and influence societal attitudes, making them a powerful force in the ongoing debate over Australia's population policy. When you add up all these concerns about jobs, housing, national identity and more, it's easy to see why the idea of a big Australia has become such a hot-button issue. For many Australians, it's not just about numbers. It's about the kind of country they want to live in. As we look to the future, the debate over immigration and population growth is unlikely to go away. Australia's leaders will need to carefully balance the benefits of a larger, more diverse population with the need to address the challenges that come with it. The discussion over a big Australia is a reflection of broader global trends. Many developed nations are grappling with similar issues as they balance the need for economic growth with concerns about national identity, social cohesion, and sustainability. In this context, Australia's debate over immigration and population growth serves as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing the world in the 21st century.